And when it comes to training the torso, there are different types of exercise. So as I've mentioned in the previous part, we've got lifting, so we've got heavy lifting, and we've got a throw or a golf swing. So these are different mechanisms within the core. And all of them need proprioceptive control. Now, as I've mentioned, you can't directly train the deepest layer because it's very unconscious and it's all about feedback. You're not there to develop those muscles from the perspective of hypertrophy. You don't really need them to get bigger. It doesn't really serve any purpose to get them bigger. So it's all about proprioceptive control, so holding posture. So when we talk about a heavy lift, we would talk about maintaining posture of the spine. Now, the ideal posture is the neutral posture or the natural curves of the spine. Why? Because it's what distributes the load most effectively around the torso and doesn't concentrate it on certain tissues, which puts them at greater risk to fail. Now, if the spine is flexed when we lift, because we're lifting a box off the floor, it's in an awkward position and we need to round the spine. If we round the spine, but if we brace the torso as best we can in that rounded position, it's going to be more protected. The worst thing you can do with a spine is go through full flexion and extension under load. So if it's body weight and there is very little load, you have much more license to flex and extend the spine because the load is that much lower. If you are a power lifter or a strongman and you can lift 100, 200 kilos off the floor, if you were asked to lift 50 kilos, you could probably do that with a flexed spine because it wouldn't be a huge amount of load for a person like that. But if someone who isn't a power lifter, that doesn't exercise, if they were asked to lift the same 50 kilos, they would have to go about it like a power lifter would, lifting 200 kilos. So there's a relative nature to this that we have to understand. We also have to understand that there are different types of movement and exercises. And that is that there are high force, low velocity exercises, i.e. heavy exercises done in a slow way, and light exercises, so low force, high velocity, but very fast, a golf swing. So these need to be trained differently. So when you see golfers, or if there are golfers out there that only train strength training, they are diminishing their ability to perform a golf swing well because they're taking away the elastic nature that their body requires. That doesn't mean they shouldn't do strength training, but it doesn't want to be a dominant part of their training program. They want to have exercises that create an elastic nature to their body. This is why kettlebells are so good. That's why I talk about them a lot. Then you've got deadlifts on the other end of the scale. So if we start out from that perspective, is that when it comes to exercise, we aren't going to train the deepest level because they're proprioceptive control, posture control. They will kind of be done by default, but we have to understand what exercises we are doing. And there are two types. There are heavy, slow at one end of the spectrum, and there are light and fast at the other end of the spectrum. What we then have to understand is that who needs which one and when. So a power lifter or strongman will need heavy, slow and controlled, or the majority, vast majority, like that. And a golf player will require lighter, faster, as it's primary makeup of the program at the other end of the spectrum. But that doesn't, again, mean they shouldn't do strength training. It just means it doesn't want to be a priority for them, or a significant proportion of their program. So if we start from that perspective, so when we are performing the deadlift, what we need to be able to do is maintain that posture and lift through that posture with good postural control. What that will do is, because it's a heavy load, that will create a lot of intra-abdominal pressure, so the force going out, which requires the muscles to contract to hold those forces in. That's what gives you your core strength. It's not necessarily training the muscles per se. If you load the torso in a logical way and sensible way, and you build the ability of the muscles to hold in the intra-abdominal pressure that's trying to push out, that's your core strength. What you then need is the ability to do that over a prolonged period of time. So you need to build endurance into that, which basically requires you to do it multiple times. Now, I'm talking from the perspective of lifting something heavy, what's required for it. If we look at beginners in a second, we'll look at how to build all of that up. So we've got the deadlift. So as I've mentioned, the deadlift, you generate the force in the legs, or certainly the lifting force in the legs. You maintain, so let's just say it's 100 kilos for argument's sake. You create the force to lift the 100 kilos. You maintain the posture of the spine, and what that does is, if you maintain posture in the arms and shoulders, it means that the weight will lift off the floor. If you start lifting the hips and the spine bends, you don't lift the weight off the floor, because the spine is bending, because you're saying that my core isn't strong enough to lift that weight. The hips are, because they're starting to lift, but the spine isn't. So we maintain the posture. When we maintain the posture, that will activate all those superficial muscles, and conscious control, you will get the abdominals as well. So that is the transferring of force in a deadlift, which goes from the legs through the torso and down the arms. And if the spine bends, we get the energy leak and the concentration of force, which leaves those tissues, or where that leak is, more vulnerable to injury. If we then go on to the other end of the scale and we talk about the light exercises, and what I should say is, with the heavy, slow and controlled exercises, that's where the abdominal brace comes in, and holding stiff, because you need to hold stiff to hold the posture. If we go to the other end of the scale and we go to the golfer as the example, now, or the throwing athlete, so a baseball pitcher or a cricket bowler, whatever it may be, their requirements are very different to the lifter. So the requirements over here are, they need to train pulses. So if we take the golf swing as the example, you start with the club next to the ball, which is on the floor. And then you go into a backswing. So as you initiate the backswing, there is initial pulse of the core. As you lift it through, the muscles will dampen their activity. And then when you get to the top of the swing, they will repulse. And you get that initial pulse. Again, as they come back down, they will dampen their activity, and the activity of the muscle will dampen. And then when it comes to strike the ball, there will be another pulse. So it's contract, relax, contract, relax, contract. And then as you go to the follow through, there will be another relaxation, and then you bring the club down. So this mechanism is very different because they are transferring their force differently. You don't transfer the force all the way through the swing. You transfer the force with the pulse. That's how you transfer the force in light, elastic, fast movements. It's done in that pulse, and that's what they need to train. So they need to be training those pulses. It's the same with someone that kicks, it's the same with someone that punches, it's the same with someone with throws. Obviously the mechanism is different, the pattern is different, but that underlying principle of contract, relax, contract, relax, contract, relax is it sort of holds all the way through. It's universal. So they are transferring the force when they pulse. So if they pulse slightly early or slightly late, then they get their energy link, then they get their increased risk of injury. But if they tune that, that's where they then get technique. That's where things become effortless. So when you see a professional golf player, for example, hit the ball very far and it looked effortless, that's because they're tuned in and they've got that timing to do that swing, to do those pulses and relax, contract, relax, contract. That's what technique and effortless performance is. It's that turning on and turning off, or heightening activity and dampening activity, and knowing when to do it. And when they time it right, that's when it looks most effortless. When they time it wrong, that's when it starts to look like, oh, that looks a bit off. That doesn't look quite right. And that's what kind of happens. So that's at the two extremes of performance, if you will. So that's like the tip of the pyramid. Now what we've got to understand is how to get to that point. So if we are beginners, let's say. So first of all, we need proprioceptive control. We need to know where our body is and what it's doing. So just as a beginning point, we don't just go into this complex exercise and start doing these very elaborate exercises, because when I would ask people that I work with, can you feel what your hip is doing there? Can you feel what your shoulder is doing there? Can you feel what your spine is doing there? Oh, no. I just trying to focus on doing the exercise, just trying to move the weight from A to B. That's all I was focused on. I don't know what my hip was doing, don't know what my shoulder was doing, don't know what my spine was doing, couldn't feel any muscles. It was just very narrow focus. I need to get the weight from A to B. So that tells me they don't have proprioceptive control. What they have is the ability to get a weight from A to B. That's where I'm saying most of the industry is, until you build that proprioceptive control. Okay, through that large movement, how do we get it from A to B? Where the hip does this, the spine does this, the shoulder does this, then it does that, then A, B, C, D, so on and so forth. And then you should be able to go through that as you're doing the movement. You should be able to check that as you're doing the movement. That's proprioceptive control. That can be done. So you start so this is an example that I've used in many tutorials, and there are a lot of other ones out there. But so we start with a plank. A lot of people say don't need to use plank, don't do that, blah 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 blah. I'm not using it because I want you to use a plank. I'm using it because I want you to feel your abdominals working. I want you to feel the brace working. I want you to be able, when you're in that position, to be able to push your shoulders down and feel your lats. I want you to be able to build that proprioceptive control without any movement. So I want you to build the stiffness. That's the first thing I want you to build. Then we can start layering in movement. Okay, let's stay in the plank, but let's lift an arm up and let's keep the hips still. Okay, your hips are moving. Can you feel they're moving? Yes, I can feel them moving. Well, when the right hip wants to kick upwards, try and push it back down. And then when they do it, okay, I've got that. Okay, so we're building proprioceptive control. What will also kind of come as a natural part of that is endurance. Because we're going to be doing it for a period of time, we're going to hold the plank for a period of time, feel all the muscles. We're going to move the arm for a few reps. And then, again, we're going to feel that. So endurance is going to be built as a natural consequence. So we build the proprioceptive control, we build the endurance. What we then do is we then start getting them up on their feet and we start building movement part by part. Now, what I mean by that is if we take a throw, for example, it's a rotational exercise. So what I want people to be able to do is rotate from the hip and not the spine. So we choose exercises that rotate from the hip, and we just get them rotating at the hip, and we keep the shoulders and the hips in line. That's what we do to start with. What we then are able to do, like a golf swing, is we separate them, and then you create the pulsing action that comes with that protects the spine. So this is where a lot of people lose the understanding that, oh no, we need to load the spine and we need to move it. If you look at the anatomy, that's the worst thing you can do. If it's a light weight, you can do it. If it's a heavy weight, it's not a great thing to do for the spine. But as I mentioned before, if you've got a beginner doing it and you ask them to lift a heavy weight and do that, it's going to be much more of a problem than if you've got a power lifter and you ask them to lift 50 kilos to do it. So if you get a power lifter to move the spine with 50 kilos, it'll probably be fine. But if you get a beginner to do that with 50 kilos, it will probably be a problem. You may have to ask them to do it with 10 or 5 or whatever it may be, because you're adapting that relative load on the spine. So then you start building the dynamic control through the torso, so you're able to protect it with movement, or with pulsing, but also you build performance. So it's a double-edged sword, but in a positive way, because when you can get bracing right during a heavy load, you get more transfer of force and you get more distribution of load. So that's your double-edged sword that's going to improve your performance and minimize your risk of injury. When you're moving things fast, like in sports and things, again, you've got the double-edged sword. If you can get the pulse right, which is like a micro brace, if you can get that right, you enhance performance and you reduce load on the spine, and in some respects, you protect it. So those are the general principles of how you build a core, how you build a torso. So you have to start simple and you have to build up. The problem with a lot of the industry is that it goes the other way. They start off with the cool, complicated stuff and make people think they're doing a good thing, where they may be, but they may also be adversely loading joints and muscles and tissues and so on and so forth, putting themselves at risk of injury. So it's about being sensible with it. But hopefully, now that I've gone through the anatomy, the sort of the functional anatomy, or described the function of the anatomy, and then put exercises on top, you can sort of see the logic as to how I've come to the conclusion. If you work from exercise backwards into anatomy, it's the same sort of story. If you work from anatomy out into exercise, it's the same story. So hopefully this has been helpful. It may well be a slightly new idea, but hopefully it's been helpful. It's given you some fresh thinking with regards to exercise, and it will hopefully build better bodies in the future. So if you've enjoyed the content of this video, hit the like button. If you learned something new, hit the thanks button. If you want to watch more of this, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon. And if you have got a comment or a question, stick it down below as well.